The tragic plane crash that happened in D.C. last night. Montana joins our nation in praying for the families that have been impacted and our friends there. And again, good morning. Thanks for being with us. The hallways are certainly humming again here in the Capitol. Thank you all for joining us. I regret Vicki, our outstanding ASL interpreter, couldn't be with us today. I'm pleased to be joined, though, by Grover Norquist. Thank you for making the trip here. Mr. Norquist is here at the invitation of some legislators to discuss the importance of delivering meaningful, permanent tax relief for Montanans. Mr. Norquist is president of the Americans for Tax Reform, a taxpayer advocacy group he founded in 1985. That's a long time ago. At President Reagan's request. Americans for Tax Reform is committed to limiting the size, scope, and cost of government. And it believes in a system in which taxes are simpler, flatter, more visible, and lower than they are today. I believe that too. Thank you, Mr. Norquist, for joining us today. As I said earlier this month, we're building a firm foundation on our shared commitment to fiscal responsibility here in Montana. Our approach is about respecting all Montanans who work hard to learn a living, ensuring government remains a servant of the people and not their master. I'm proud to report that over the last 4 years, we've been fiscally responsible, enacting conservative, balanced budgets, cutting income taxes for all Montanans at every income level, holding the line on new spending, keeping spending growth well below inflation, and even paying off all of our state debt. While we've been fiscally responsible, the Biden-created national affordability crisis has made it harder for hardworking Montanans to make ends meet. To help them navigate the nationwide affordability crisis and keep more of what they earn, we propose the largest income tax rate cut in state history. I've heard from Montanans that this is a priority and that they should keep more of what they earn. And let's be honest about what the income tax is. It's a tax on work. It's a tax on the fruits of their labor. We shouldn't tax work more than we have to. The good news is that since 2021, we've simplified our income tax code down to 2 brackets from 7 when I came into office. And we've lowered the income tax rate most Montanans pay from 6.9% to 5.9%. But as of last year, our income tax rate, the one that most Montana income taxpayers pay, remains one of the highest in the Rocky Mountain West. In fact, along with New Mexico, we have the highest rate in the nation. Idaho, Utah, Colorado, and Arizona have a flat income tax that's lower than ours. Wyoming and Nevada have no income tax at all. As a result of our high tax rate, Montanans are losing out. They're losing out on keeping more of what they earn, and they're losing out on the opportunities that come from businesses of all sizes, those are the job creators, that may choose to set up shop and create jobs here in Montana. We should permanently reduce the income tax rate most Montanans pay, provide permanent tax relief to workers and small business owners alike. I've also been clear that we should expand the earned income tax credit to incentivize work and keep lower and middle income Montanan workers. Together, these proposals make up a new record tax cut that benefits Montanans at every income level. And while we're providing permanent tax cuts, we also need to recognize the burden of rising property taxes on Montana homeowners and small businesses. One of my top priorities is delivering meaningful, permanent property tax relief to Montanans here in 2025. It's what Montanans expect policymakers to get done for them this year. To benefit them this year, however, we have to get it done quickly. To make that a reality and deliver a permanent homestead rate cut for Montana residents for where they live, the bill needs to get to my desk by mid-February. I know that's a tight timeline, but the Department of Revenue needs the runway to get it implemented here in 2025. Montanans are counting on us, the administration and the legislature, to get this done. This homestead rate cut is estimated to lower property taxes for Montana homeowners by 15% and for small businesses by 18%. It's projected to directly reduce property taxes for more than 215,000 Montana homeowners and more than 32,000 small business owners, as well as provide indirect relief for 130,000 renters across the state. Now, I know there are a lot of ideas, and I encourage robust debate, but let me lay out some some principles that we want to adhere to. I don't think we should use hardworking Montanans pay hardworking Montanans pay in income taxes from their work to pay for a property tax reduction for folks who, for example, might live in California and have a second home here. I also don't think we should subsidize local spending with a state bailout using Montana's income tax collections. When a government subsidizes something, it generally becomes more expensive. For example, federal student loans help families pay for higher education, but because those funds are guaranteed, colleges and universities have an incentive to increase their tuition bills. If the state government subsidizes property taxes with income tax revenue, it will create an incentive for local taxing jurisdictions to increase their spending. When it comes down to it, we should reduce property taxes for Montanans who live in their homes, for small businesses, and for renters. Let me put a face on all of this. Yesterday, I held a visit with a small business in Bozeman. Chris and Kate Forrest started Tactic 11 years ago. Chris is a former Navy SEAL, dedicated service member who deployed 3 times to the Persian Gulf and 5 times to Afghanistan. Tactic provides tested military techniques to civilians so they can protect their families and avoid victimization. I heard firsthand about the life-changing impact Tactic has on their about 2,500 clients every year. Kate, she does the bills, and she shared her own personal experience with the impact that taxes have. She was so appreciative of the tax cuts that we've delivered already, she even gave me a hug. Veterans and business owners like Chris and Kate are the backbone of Montana. They create good paying jobs for Montanans and strengthen our state and economy. Can I get a word? We'll continue doing what we can to support them, and will remain dedicated to cutting income and property taxes so they can keep more of what they work so hard to earn. Now, I briefly introduced him at the start, but I want to give you all a chance to hear directly from Mr. Norquist and why our proposals are important for Montana. For 40 years, Grover Norquist and Americans for Tax Reform have protected Americans from crushing tax hikes and government overreach. I'm pleased to have him here to share a few words. Grover?
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. Montana's been making progress in bringing its income tax down. I shared this with everybody, but the green states are the 8 states that have no income tax at all. Montana is a state without a sales tax, and Oregon and Delaware. Our friends in the yellow states are single rate taxes or flat rate taxes. Montana has 2 rates now, down from 7. North Dakota also had 7, recently went down to 2. Ohio had 5, down to 2. The movement in the states is from many rates down towards 1. Ohio has decided they'll be moving all the way to 1. Kansas now has the votes in both houses to go to a single rate tax in addition to what we've done. And North Dakota is looking to also continue to move down towards 1 rate. Why 1 rate? Income taxes at 1 rate are difficult to raise because you have to you're treating everybody in the state. Everybody pays 3%, everybody pays 4%, whatever the number is. Everybody's treated the same, and people understand what they do pay, and they know what their neighbor pays based on the same percentage. And it's very difficult to raise that rate. In Illinois, they by constitution have a single rate tax. It's under 5%. Illinois, you would think, would look more like Minnesota or Vermont or California or New Jersey, New York. It doesn't, because they have a single rate tax, and even though the legislature might want to spend more money, they look out and say, we can't go to the people and say, it's worth it if you all pay for it. That's a very interesting change. Also, it's very easy to reduce when necessary because everybody in the state gains at the same time. So we've added 7 states to single rate taxes in the last 5 years. I mentioned that Kansas and Ohio are definitely going to single rate. Missouri, I met with the governor there earlier this week. They're looking to go to single rate and then begin the march to 0 as well. The black dot are states where the governor and the legislature have not only said we're going to 0, but they've taken concrete steps towards that and passed the laws to begin to make that happen. That's why Missouri, where the government just made this comment yesterday, does not have a black dot, even though he and the legislature have now agreed that that's the direction they're going in. So getting down to a single rate says to people who want to invest in Montana, in a state, that one, this is not a state that's going to have you show up and then start raising your taxes. It also says when you have a policy of coming down and bringing it down, that you're less likely to get bit or be badly surprised this year, next year, 10 years from now. People who invest and build in states don't do so for 2 weeks or 2 years or 20 years. They do it for long term, and they need to understand that the likelihood of them getting their taxes raised is low. The other issue that's moving, the other issue that's moving is that people are concerned about property taxes in the various states. In Florida, they passed a law that no property tax, no tax on a property can go up faster than 3% a year. And that if you sell the house, that protection continues across to the next person who buys the house. This makes sure people know exactly when they buy a house what it's going to cost, and they can project the property taxes. It's not going to be a surprise to them. California, with Proposition 13, did something similar, limiting the rate and the percentages, but they didn't have it follow the next owner or the children of the person who did it. So Florida has been a model to look for. What you want to avoid is Texas or New Jersey. In Texas, mayors who wanted to spend more money than they were willing to raise in taxes throw up their hands and say taxes are too high, and they get the state legislature to fund the city, and they promise they won't raise taxes. However, taxes continue to raise. Property taxes in Texas continue to raise faster than other places, even with the subsidy. And now there's this permanent call on the state of Texas. Well, we expect you to keep bailing us out. We keep spending, and you keep bailing us out. And I keep pretending that reduced the property taxes, didn't reduce the property taxes. The other painful example is New Jersey, which in 1965 had no sales tax and no income tax. They just had property taxes and excise taxes and business taxes, but no personal income tax, no broad-based sales tax. And property taxes were high, and people said this is a problem, property taxes are high. So they added a sales tax to the property taxes to make the property taxes go down. Well, when you swallow a second tapeworm to try and discipline the first tapeworm, both tapeworms grow at the rate tapeworms choose to. It doesn't slow things down. And so 10 years later, New Jersey had high property taxes, a high sales tax, to which they decided to fix it by adding an income tax. So fast forward to today, they have an income tax and a sales tax and high property taxes. And so 3 tapeworms is not better than 1, and adding additional taxes does not hold down the other taxes, even if sometimes you pass rules that say, and this will never happen. Yeah, right. And so watch out for efforts by cities that are not managing their own cities properly, deciding that somebody else should give them money to continue not managing as well as they probably should, rather than having them do the management to keep spending reduced and at a reasonable level. So the rest of the country is looking at doing exactly what you're looking to do, is taking income taxes down, making them a single rate so that people can comfortably understand what's happening on their tax burden, and on the property taxes, limitations on taxes, whether it's requiring a vote of the people to do anything more than exists, to require 2/3 votes. There are lots of different requiring that any vote to either raise property taxes or to borrow money has to be done in a November election, not in April or August or some very innovative time that nobody knows about. Those reforms are happening also in other states. Thank you.
Thank you, Grover, and I appreciate you taking the time to come to Montana and share your expertise with us. I know you've been meeting with legislators, and we
Yes.
can benefit from all your experience there. Again, the important thing is we need permanent tax relief, both on income tax and property tax relief, and that remains our focus. We've put forward a historic proposal. We look forward to working with the legislature to get it done. And with that said, I would be happy to open up for questions. Shaylee, thank you for joining us yesterday.
Yeah.
And I should note, we get out and we travel every week across the state. You're all welcome to join us, and I think you got some pretty good access yesterday. Yep.
Yeah,
So,
great to get out of the Capitol.
you know, things happen outside of Helena as well, so feel free to join us.
I appreciate that, Governor. I have a question about the capping of local spending. I was watching Senator Zolnikoff's bill hearing, and there was a long line of county commissioners and other local government advocates who testified in opposition. A lot of them I heard say, this is going to require us to cut firefighting services or law enforcement services. Some of those conservative county commissioners saying that. Do you think they're bluffing? Do you think those cuts are warranted? Where do you fall there?
Well, let's look at the facts. Over the last 20 years, inflation has averaged a little over 2%. Local spending growth has averaged over 6% per year. So I don't, and not every county is guilty. Some are much better fiscal stewards than others, but there is no question local spending has grown much faster than inflation. So there is a spending problem. And as we talked about yesterday, there's 2 ways to solve this problem. One, you can spend less. That's the approach the state has taken. We have passed very conservative budgets over the last 4 years, significantly less than the growth of inflation. And guess what? We have surpluses, both structural and one-time. This has allowed us to put forward proposals to further reduce the tax burden. Local municipalities have decided their approach is to tax more, not spend less. I'm firmly in the spend less category. And we've done it without cutting essential services, just by slowing the growth of government. And I think that's a better approach for Montanans.
So they should just take those cuts then, do you think?
Each situation is different. There's a number of proposals. As you know, we put this bipartisan task force together on property taxes. There's 12 different recommendations. Some focus on shifting the burden to out-of-staters. I'm in favor of that, reducing the rate for homeowners, small businesses, and renters. And some of them focus on less spending. I think we ought to pursue all of those ideas. Yep. Tom?
Governor, have you had any indication from the House and the Senate that they might be able to hit that mid-February deadline to, sort of get revenue where they need to be by spring?
Well, I'm an optimist. I meet with legislative leadership, both minority and majority, almost every week. I think it's a priority. I think we agree we need to get this done for the people of Montana, and I'm waiting with bated breath. Yeah.
So kind of thinking about the broad picture here, right? We remain a state without a sales tax. You'd like to bring down income taxes. We'd like to bring down property taxes for residents. In a long-term sense, do you think it's possible to do that while keeping Montana a state that doesn't have a statewide sales tax?
I want to be really clear. Montanans have spoken. They don't want a sales tax. So our focus is to make government as efficient as possible so we can reduce the burden of both property and income taxes on Montana to let them keep more of what they earned. And I think the scenario that Grover Norquist shared about New Jersey, where the last thing we want to do is ingest another tapeworm that's going to consume all available revenue. Have there been other examples where people have tried to backfill property taxes with other sources of revenue and not got the result they wanted?
All. North Dakota, Ohio, Nebraska. I mean, in each of these are trying to disentangle it at present. North Dakota, the governor is now going to be Secretary of Energy. It's been a major challenge in North Dakota because they started down that road and then they realized it wasn't getting them anywhere. They weren't getting improvement in local budgets, and trying to disentangle then becomes is difficult.
And going down that road, specifically, what are you referring to?
Going down the road of having the state step in and become co-owner of overspending by the local government and their unwillingness to manage things properly, so that now if every time the city overspends or the county overspends, they go, oh, unless the folks in the entire state send us more money, we'll have to raise taxes, and it'll be somebody else's fault, not mine, says mayor, says county commissioner. And when it's not their fault, there is nothing that limits spending. And just one thought, anyone who tells you that if I didn't get more money from other people, I'd have to cut the police, has just told you that in their entire budget, the least important thing in their mind, the least important thing, are the police. I think the question is, really? Is that really true, or are you trying to scare people? If it is true, we need a different mayor. And if you're trying to scare people, we need a different mayor.
Okay, yeah.
So mid-February is rolling up in about 2 weeks now. Is there contingency plans for if the legislature can't get this done by mid-February, March, April? And, is there ways to get immediate relief out that you could pivot to, like doing another round of rebates, anything like that you're considering?
Well, this is a priority for Montanans. We need to get it done. And I've been very clear in my State of the State, again here today. We continue to emphasize it when we meet with both majority and minority. And I think we have a common view that this is a priority for Montanans. We need permanent property tax relief. We've done rebates in the past, but it's not permanent relief, and we need to get permanent relief done. Jonathan?
Governor, how close do you think that you and legislative leadership are in terms of the overall structure of how you want to see the tax relief done? Because I sort of get the impression that maybe especially on the Senate leadership side, they have sort of different ideas for the emphasis is which areas they'd like to emphasize.
Well,
how close do you think you are?
Well, I respect their role in this process. We ought to have robust debate. That's why today I've kind of lined out some hard lines for us. I don't think we should be taking income tax revenue and subsidizing local spending. That's a hard line for our office. I think that there are other ideas that are floating around the legislature that could probably enhance our proposal, and I'll look forward to getting a bill to my desk. Do we have questions online? Okay. It's Amanda?
Yes.
Yeah, Amanda, go ahead. Looks like.
Okay.
Yep,
There you go.
we can hear you. Go ahead, Amanda.
Great, thanks. I wanted to ask about the news out of the White House this week regarding federal loans and grants. And it appears that there are some energy projects that you champion that are kind of caught up in that back and forth over federal funding. including the Montana Renewables Facility loan, and potentially also the North Plains Connector transmission line. I'm just wondering if you have a comment on how you see Montana's role in continuing to champion for those projects, given that there seems to be a little opposition from the White House.
Yeah, so the question is about this executive order around federal grants coming back. Particularly, you mentioned a couple of the green energy proposals that have come forward and the transmission lines. Frankly, Washington has been spending like drunken sailors. So the fact that President Trump is tapping the brakes on spending is a welcome change to the way things have been going. Now, that being said, we don't have a lot of specifics on that executive order. It clearly said benefits for Montanans and Social Security and Medicare would not be impacted by that executive order. We're going to work with our federal delegation and ensure that Montana interests are represented as we sort through this. But I'm thankful that we have a president that's finally tapping the brakes on federal spending. Do we have another?
Not this time.
Okay, yeah.
Oh, Governor, we had one question. I promise I'll have tax questions soon, but I'm curious if you have a response to the fact that Senator Ellsworth tried to spend down some of that OBPP money on the contract he tried to take out.
Yeah, that's a legislative issue. I know they have an ethics investigation underway, and we're cooperating with the legislature to the extent we can shine any light on it. So, yeah.
When we talk about this slice of the pie, and you clearly no sales tax, and so as we're talking about cutting budgets, is there something like an end piece where it's like we can't cut anymore or we can't have?
Yeah. So let me be clear. You're the only one that said cutting budgets. We haven't cut budgets. What we've done, and I've explained this in the past, we've held the line on new spending. So in 2021. Our budget for 2021 and 2022 grew state spending less than 1% per year. That was significantly below inflation. And what happened in parallel with that was as we've held spending flat or nearly flat, our GDP has grown, which means our state revenue is greater. So we did not cut any essential services. We just didn't grow state spending. The surplus that resulted can now be allocated either to one-time maintenance projects, rebates to taxpayers, or permanent reductions in tax rates. That's the strategy we're going to go forward. So we're not cutting anything. We are looking for efficiency opportunities, but we've fully funded essential services, and we're using the significant growth in our economy to fund these reductions so that the burden is less on all of Montanans. Yeah, last question.
Sure. Follow up on your point about the philosophical line on not wanting to use income tax dollars to subsidize local spending. Part of your budget is using income tax dollars to help local school districts with teacher pay, right? How can so a service that local school districts are unable, or something local districts are unable to do via their property tax collections? Could you talk about how your philosophy broadly squares with that specific proposal?
Yeah. So there are. I'm a conservative. I believe there's a limited set of things that government should be directly engaged in. We have an obligation for K through 12 education. We have a support for higher ed. Also, infrastructure that can't be paid for in another way. This is why we've taken one-time money and applied it to roads and bridges. We've taken one-time money, we've applied it to water and sewer projects. So there are essential services that we're going to continue to help local municipalities with. But we have communities that are spending money on shade tree districts, swimming pools, and other things, and then trying to get us to bail out their spending. We're not going to do that. Okay. Thank you, everybody.